Hey, Brett here with ClickMill.co. In this video, we are continuing to discuss the Columbo tactic where we're questioning and trying to understand the perspective and worldview and positioning of someone who is maybe being a little bit debatey with us. I know I'm not a big fan of being in debates. I'm much more a fan of being in genuine conversation where we're seeking the truth. And so this Columbo tactic can help us to get to that point where we're all being intellectually honest with each other. Now, in this case, someone is talking to you and they're saying, Juke, can you give me another one of these claims?
Sure. I
You're
mean,
good at
Jesus
this.
never we all know that Jesus never walked the earth. I mean, he's not
Perfect.
a real person. He's like Santa Claus. So,
Okay, got it. Love that. And so my question then, Juke, would be like, where did you hear? So instead of saying who said that, who did you hear that from? It's where did you hear that?
yeah, I mean, it's obvious.
It's I don't think it's obvious. I think he was a real person. So how is that obvious to you? Where did you hear that?
Uh, Internet.
The internet, right? Okay. And so, okay, the internet. I read an article on Wikipedia, or it's like, well, I changed an article on Wikipedia once and then got kicked off because they didn't like my answer, but anybody can change that. And so when we ask for the source or medium, a lot of people are not how do I say this? The source or medium that's going to count is basically someone with a PhD. If they have at least one PhD, they're probably a really good source for this. Or like, you know, in some fields, a master's, like, oh, I heard this from a master's in marriage and family counseling. It's like, okay, that's probably an expert. But if it's anything else other than a technical magazine in that field, you're probably going to be able to question the validity of that source. I heard it on the History Channel. I heard it on TV. What TV station has industry experts that are actually explaining like academic verifiable information? Very little. I heard it on Facebook. I heard it on TikTok. I heard it on Instagram. I heard it on YouTube. What YouTube channel? Some guy, like Answers with Dave. Who's Dave? You heard it from Dave. Tell me about Dave's credentials to be, disproving the. Okay, well, so once we get them back to their source, we can say, well, actually, I'm familiar with some other sources, and here's what they say. And your sources, well, assuming you're studying and you've found some sources, okay. I have it on really good authority, according to, let's say, Josephus or Pliny the Younger, right, Juke? I'll name drop two because those are the two that come off the top of my head. That, right, they're ancient historians that lived closer to the time of Jesus and said Jesus was a real person. Not only that, but Josephus was Roman and didn't even like Jesus. He's like, that guy over there is causing all these problems. We hate that guy. Pretty
Yeah,
good
so you
shot. He's
have
alive. He was alive.
yeah, so you have Josephus writing well, Josephus was born in 37 AD. You have Tacitus,
Tacitus.
who is a Roman historian. You have the letters of Pliny the Younger to
Yep.
Emperor Trajan, which was in the early second century, but they lived during the first century, and they were talking about events of the first century. You
The
have
eyewitness accounts in the book of what John, Matthew, Mark, Luke. You got the eyewitness accounts of the 500, which is itself a historical document.
Yeah, you have five writers. You have five different authors who talk about Jesus rising from the dead, which is you have James, the brother of Jesus, Jude, the brother of Jesus, Peter, Matthew, and John. All five of those were direct eyewitnesses of the
Mhm.
events. And we have all of their writings that claim that Jesus rose from the dead.
And
So
those writings were written of within one living lifetime of the events. So people who read those writings could have made their own writings saying this is nonsense, this never happened, and there are none of those. Right,
right.
Jude?
So,
Sorry.
right. So you have 11 of the 12 that went to their death proclaiming that Jesus rose from the dead, outside of John, who died on the island of Patmos. Now, someone could question that and say, well, we don't have all 11 of those sources, but we do have five. Again, of those sources. We have five sources that different sources written by different people claiming that Jesus rose from the dead. Then we have at least five non-Christian sources who lived in the first century or early second century who wrote about
Right.
Jesus. So yeah.
So, and so that you're watching, because this isn't really the point of the video here, but so that you're watching, that is a tremendous amount of historical evidence for the fact that Jesus lived, to the point that the most educated atheistic scholars, it is well accepted, even among atheistic scholars, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that Jesus was alive. They don't even make this argument anymore. So anyone making this argument has not been formally educated on the historical Jesus and whether or not he's a real person. This has already been accepted. So what happens as we use this Columbo tactic? Oh, tell me who you heard that from. They did not hear it from the experts because the experts don't agree on that. Now, assuming you know that going in, you can back it up to, Professor Dave or whoever it is on YouTube. And while he said this, okay, well, here is what the leading industry experts believe on both the Christian side and the atheist side. So I don't know who you're listening to, but I can cite 11 sources and the broader academic community, and this doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's kind of what we can use the Columbo tactic for, is to define where they're hearing it. Where did you hear that? What's the source or medium or platform? And then we can question the integrity of that. And then especially if you have better sources to cite, you can then pretty much shut down their argument. If that's where the conversation leads, and that's not always the best approach either, but it's an option. Any further thoughts on that, guys?
I was just gonna say, our oldest manuscript, which a manuscript is a copy of a document.
Mm-hmm.
Our oldest manuscript is a piece from I think it's John Rylands, but regardless, it's a piece from the Book of John, the Gospel of John, and it's from about AD 125. And so if you have the Book of John, the Gospel of John being written, most scholars would say between 90 and 95 AD, although some would say some would claim that it could have been before 70 AD because it doesn't mention the fall of Jerusalem. However, the majority of consensus of scholars would say between 90 and 95 AD, the Gospel of John was written. And then we have our earliest manuscript of the New Testament is from the Gospel of John, which is like 30 years. Like we have almost an original document there.
Yeah.
We have within 30 years, 30, 35 years of the original documents. So that's super cool.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look online to give some kind of understanding here, and we're going to move on, but it looks like there's, like, for example, we believe in Shakespeare, but there are zero surviving manuscripts from Shakespeare. It appears, and I'm trying to make sure I've got my facts straight. It says, with the possible exception of this is from, by the way, citing sources, um, a website dedicated to Shakespeare through a university that I have now missed. Where did it go? Now I'm stumbling. Let me see here. University of Victoria. And the website from the University of Victoria is called Internet Shakespeare. So this is a website dedicated to facts about Shakespeare. Seems reasonably credible here. And it says, a play that Shakespeare may have helped write, no manuscripts of Shakespeare's survive. The only certain evidence we have of his handwriting is in his signature, and it appears that they have a copy of the signature, is what I'm understanding from what I'm seeing. And so when you're talking about, we teach Shakespeare in school and they have no direct manuscripts, and then maybe we have some copies of his stuff, there's more evidence for the New Testament than there is for that. And you're talking, there's a limited number of those copies. And so you're talking about, there's weaker evidence for things that we teach in schools than there is for the New Testament. And it's going to be very difficult to question the validity of scripture when all essentially, and this is I'm quoting right now, which book is that? Evidence that demands a verdict. When essentially all of human history, of ancient history, has less evidence than the New Testament, it's going to be real hard to question the New Testament, because if you're going to try to debunk especially the New Testament, but even the Old Testament, you have to also say all of ancient history is gone. We know nothing about the ancient world because it is the best attested. So all of that, wrapping it back around, we want to ask for the medium or the source of the information they're quoting. They're probably not going to know, but if they do, that at least gives us a position to begin a conversation where we can share what we know of evidence and they can share what they know of the evidence, and then we can actually have a conversation. Anything else on that, guys? Doing good. All right, sweet. In the next video, we're going to get into understanding terms, which I think is super important. So we will see you there. God bless.